And welcome back to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Burr, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. Roger, got to get your thoughts quickly on the PGA Championship. Certainly, Xander Schauffele finally breaks through, but I'm not sure if the lasting thought will be Scotty Scheffler in a jumpsuit or Bryson DeChambeau firing up the crowd. Both, in my mind, stories 1A and 1B to Xander winning.
Yeah, it seems that way. And poor Xander, right? I mean, this guy's been knocking on the door for a while now. Incredible finishes in majors, and get upstaged by a jumpsuit and a live golfer, right? And let's be honest, a great golfer. Bryson DeChambeau deserves what he's been getting. He's embraced the crowd. So really, really fun, exciting tournament. That's for sure.
Can I get your thoughts quickly on? I know it seems less likely, I guess, because of the people dropping off the board, but I think that DeChambeau, I think a deal has to be made. I can't imagine a deal not being made.
It's too silly, right? It's gotten to the silly stage, right, where the players are in the dark. They know that something needs to happen. They like each other. This idea of being so opposed of each other a year ago was just all fabricated and made up for media to kind of feed into this frenzy of you bad guys, we good guys, right? Not a very good position for the PGA Tour or anyone to be in this sport, right?
It just seems so easy. It seems so easy. You have 6 events, they play together. You have the 4 majors, that's 10 events. Live, do your thing. PGA Tour, do your thing the rest of the way. We have 6 events where everyone's in it. We have the 4 majors. It's 10 events a year where they're all together, and then both just continue operating as you're operating. 10's enough. We're all good with 10, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what's going to be really interesting, Ryan, is what is the PGA Tour going to do without a major? I mean, think about this. The PGA Tour does not have a major championship. The PGA of America has 2. They have the Ryder Cup and they have the PGA Championship. And then everything else is individual. The PGA Tour does not own a major. They should possibly think about that and figure out what they're going to do from there.
Well, they've been talking about the players for a decade, making that a major, and why the LPGA makes majors by the week. The PGA Tour hasn't stopped. We will shift gears if we can with the head coach, director of golf at East Carolina University, Kevin Williams, and coach. Wonderful to have you on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. As we continue to talk with coaches from men's and women's college golf just about every week here, enlightening our listeners and viewers to what it takes as a junior golfer to ultimately make it to the next level. So I'll just start with a basic question there. You have such a wealth of experience. In your mind, and I know there's no cookie cutter, but in your mind, is there one quality that you have found that every junior golfer should have this if I'm going to recruit them to play for me?
Well, I think it's the person that dots the I's and crosses the T's. You know, the best players that I've seen be successful are the ones who pay attention to detail, have a plan, be very analytical in what they do golf-wise, but don't play that way. Be really diligent in working hard on your golf swing, but when you go play golf. And it's a hard combination to find that. And you see it all the time, you know, like with what Victor Hovland kind of has been going through and searching for it. You're always looking for that answer. But it's been really interesting to see the ones who work extremely hard, have a plan for success, but then when they play with great feel. When I was at South Carolina, I think of Pauline Bouchard, and Pauline really had this incredible work ethic, really tinkered a lot with her swing. But when she went out and played, she played with great feel. Well, she started struggling last year on the LPGA, and what do you start tinkering with? You start tinkering with the mechanics, and you get away from, you know, doing the little things well, and then that tinkering translates into the competitive side, and you just don't play as well. And I think that's what you've seen with Victor Hovland over the last few months. I think he had clarity, right, this weekend. He has some great clarity with where he was with his swing. And so that's kind of what I see. I think players that have a great understanding of what they're trying to do golf wise, but play golf when you go out on the golf course. That's the biggest thing I see is translating to success.
Coach, that's very interesting. You know, several years ago, I spent a lot of time with Nick Faldo, and everybody thought about him as this robotic player, but yet he would say all the time he practices really hard and methodical and very analytical, but plays by feel. And he would always say, you know, when you well, how could you feel something if you don't know what it is, right? So you repeat it enough until you know what it feels like. So, so very, very interesting. Coach, I want to say thank you. I know your teams has gone through the player development assessment
Yep.
a few times, and you talk about some of the analytics. Tell the audience a little bit about some of the things that maybe you're garnishing from that experience, because I know from our feedback for the players, it's been very positive. I'd love to kind of get some feedback on that.
Yeah, I think the really good feature about the PDI, there's a number, right? There's a number associated with the work you're putting in. There's a number associated. I mean, that's why we play the game, right? Because they keep
That's right.
score. So when you're working on something and having some way of measuring what you're doing, I think the thing that really was interesting to most of our kids is when they're doing the shots into the simulator where they're having to hit the straight shot, the high, the low, the mid flight, and then doing the same thing with the draw or same thing with the cut. And you see players who maybe are one dimensional in how they hit it, but it was really interesting to watch how they were trying to be creative with trying to shape those shots because they're trying to work towards a number, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's the beautiful part about the PDI is being able to measure yourself against other people. Us as college coaches, that's what we're trying to do, right? I mean, juniors send us scores, and scores are great, but who was in the field, right? You want to be able, as a coach, we want to be able to measure them against other junior golfers and who did they beat that week, right? And so the nice thing about the PDI and measuring it is you can compare it with the junior golfers that have gone through it. We could compare ourselves with Stanford, right? Because
Hmm.
Stanford had gone through it before. So it's really good to see a program that's at the top level and our guys and girls could compare themselves to those programs, which I think is really neat. And so it kind of gives you a little bit of a barometer of where you stand, right?
Hmm.
And I think, we're doing the clip stats on our team, and we really like it because you can compare yourself to different levels of golfers, tour pros, top 25 college players, average college player, etc. So being able to measure is a great tool.
With that said, Coach, it seems to me that most of the coaches that we talk about how there really is no predictive measure on how to predict how good someone is ultimately going to be. And that which makes recruiting for every sport so incredibly difficult. You as a coach are paid to predict that he or she is going to get better and become a member of your team that is contributing. Certainly, the way it stands now, most recruiting systems start, if you will, with a coach looking at a score, not a face or a name or a height or a weight, but golfer X from the state of X shot X, and they're now on my radar. Uh, PDI, it seems, might be the first predictive measure where if you have a score from PDI, you have some of the measurables from athleticism and whatnot that could predict continued growth as opposed to, well, those athletic numbers aren't really predicting that they could get a whole lot better than the scores they're having. How could PDI ultimately influence recruiting if every junior player ultimately someday has a PDI score attached to their name and score when the very beginning of the recruiting process begins?
Well, I think it would be great because then you would be able to classify that recruit into into a category, right? Does that make sense? And so, like, we all have like our A list, the wish list, so to speak, of recruits, and then you have your B list and C list, just like recruits have that with their schools. They have, hopefully, is what they're doing. And so, I think what's really nice about the PDI measurement, if you were able to have that early on, you would be able to classify those recruits in different categories, and then you could track those players, right, throughout the course of the summer and the tournament results, and it just would it'd be easier for us as coaches. I mean, trying to predict that is really tough because you never know how they're going to adjust to school, right? Maybe they went to a small high school. East Carolina's 30,000 students, might not be a good fit. Maybe they need to go to more of a private school. So you never know how the adjustment period's going to happen when they get away from home, right? And it's way tougher for the guys than the girls. They come in a little bit, maturity levels a lot higher than the guys are as freshmen. And to be honest with you, it's easier on the women's side being able to predict who's going to be better down the road. Yeah, and just so many guys, right? It's so many good players out there on the guys' side. So having the PDI, right, Ryan, would make it a whole lot easier for you to kind of separate those guys a little bit and put them in those categories I was just talking about, because there's so many of them that look the same, right? If you would go to a range at a good junior tournament and you look up and down the range, you're like, wow, they're all good,
Yeah.
right? And so having that measurable would make a big difference. Football coaches, I talk, a good buddy of mine's football coach, they look at numbers, right, Ryan? They look at, okay, the linebacker, he's 6'2", he's 210. Okay, we know we get him in the weight room. He's got a good frame on him. We can get him to 240. What does he run the 40 in? They have the measurables, right? And so for those sports, if golf had that measurable was available to everybody and all the junior golfers, I think it'd make a big difference.
Yeah, we do too, Coach. I appreciate that. We definitely think that's something that I think these athletes, young athletes now who are coming to the game, who want to play competitive golf, want to play collegiate golf, certainly may have an advantage if they actually looked at the numbers, right? So I think that's
Right.
something that, creating the PDI for us was listening to the coaches like yourself who go, you know what, it'd be great to understand the athlete a little bit better and by numbers, if you will, because you can always, once you meet them, and you get a
Right.
sense of who they are, but you really don't know who they are, right? You don't know what's under the
Right.
hood.
That's
So,
right.
now having this measurable assessment to help you with that, it really goes a long ways. With that being said, now you actually have a baseline of maybe kind of looking at what's on your team. How are you going to, I guess a question we ask all of our coaches is, how do you recruit, right? Not tell us your secrets, but how do you recruit a player to come in and play ECU? And, I know, as you just said, it's a little bit different for the women's than it is for the men's team, but how do you recruit? What's going to help the parents out there kind of get them in front of you?
Well, I think one of the big things we look for at East Carolina, because we're a mid-major, we're a development school. I think you're developing the players at whatever level, but we're truly trying to get that person who's more of a late bloomer and turn them into a really, really good player by having access to playing, right? You say all the time, well, you can go somewhere and sit on the bench or go somewhere and play. You're always going to get better if you're going somewhere and you're traveling. It just makes a huge difference. And I mean, that's the big thing is just, you know, we're looking for athleticism. If they've played other sports, we like that because it shows the athleticism they have. We actually like the students, and I wouldn't call East Carolina a very high academic institution, so to speak. It's very challenging, but it's not with the Ivy League or the UVAs of the world. But we think if you come in and you have a strong base academically, then, like I said earlier about paying attention to detail, that player is going to have more time to work on their golf game. So if they're good students and that translates over to college, then it's going to make a huge difference for that player adjusting to college life, right? If you're a 2.5 student and you come to college, the adjustment is kind of a red flag. Okay, how is that person with a low GPA going to adjust to college, right? So the academic piece is massive. And the academic piece, especially if you're looking at private schools, for the academic scholarship to tie in with your golf scholarship, that's a big piece. So we kind of look at that too. So the athleticism, the academic piece of it, those are some of the things. And we're talking about measurables, right? And so obviously, GPA is a measurable. And so that, I think that makes a big difference a lot of times. We talk about it's a sliding curve, right? So if you have a really high GPA, your golf game may not be as great, but if you have a lower GPA and your golf game's great, that player tends to do well too, because he's helping your team, from an athletic standpoint. But we just feel like the adjustment period for those students that are really strong academically tends to be easier than the ones who are struggling academically in high school.
I look at the guys on the PGA Tour, and you have players on the PGA Tour, winners that essentially went unrecruited out of high school, found a spot in NAIA Division III, Division II, small Division I schools, made it to the PGA Tour, winners on the PGA Tour. You mentioned how good so many players are, and I understand that if you put player X next to Nick Dunlap in high school, they may not look the same. Nick Dunlap's, won the USM, won the US Junior, and he won as an amateur on the PGA Tour. There are outliers, but when you take 1,000 players that are all breaking 70, and that's really what you have. You have 1,000 players that are all shooting in the 60s on their good days. I get the top 20 are probably pretty easy to pick out, but Coach, how difficult is it really to decipher between number 50 and number 250?
It's really hard. It is really hard. And that's why you want to see them play. Late, great Richard Sykes, who was at NC State, always was famous for saying when he went to see a junior play, he wanted to see him play bad. He says, I know you can play because I'm here watching you, but I want to see how you react when you play bad. How do you react to mom and dad? Right, when you play bad. That was a really great quote from Richard. He had a bunch of them, but I think it's very hard, Ryan, to find that. And those are the things you're looking for. Like I said earlier, maybe were they an athlete that played other sports in high school? What are they as far as the grade point average is concerned? All little predictors like that. But then you and I both know there's so many good players that have just come through that were not recruited at all. That maybe I think of, and this, I'm dating myself, but Rocco Mediate and Lee Jansen, Florida Southern. I mean, rock stars down there, right? And you think of the careers they had, U.S. Open champion and stuff. I mean, there's so many stories out there like that. And the main thing I try to tell people when I work camps and junior golfers and all the different camps I work is go play. Find that place where you can play. And I get it. Maybe your mom and dad went to UNC or Wake Forest or something, and you want to go to school there. But if you really want to play professionally, if you really want to play after college, you really need to go somewhere where you can play and kind of hone your skills at that level. Then you go to the next level, right? And it's the mini tours, et cetera. Cut your teeth at that level, and then hopefully on to the PGA Tour, which, like you said earlier, I mean, the outliers, the Nick Dunlaps, the Fowlers of the world, they're the outliers. Jordan Spieth, you think about him. We had Harold Varner III played golf at East Carolina. And Harold was one. Watching him grow, I actually was coaching on the women's side at the time. Press McFall was his coach. But watching him grow each year as a golfer, and it was maturity. It was maturity. I'm not sure if he's still matured yet because he's quite the character, but you can just see the maturity level that each year that he was in college and how he grew mentally because it was matching, the golf skill was matching up to his maturity level.
Yeah. Coach, as you were just talking there, when it comes to development, and you were saying ECU being a developmental area, school, I think that's very intriguing. I think that's, as you were just talking about players having that ability to come in and play. Talk a little bit more about specifically, if you could. I'm a player. I'm interested in coming to ECU. What does that look like for me? Because I think that's a question we get, again, a lot of parents ask about, hey, what's a school environment look like? What question should I be asking for, right? So that's a big one, right? What am I
Yeah.
going to do to develop?
Yeah, I think, what are you doing as far as practice? Are you basically just letting the kids go out and practice on their own,
Right.
qualify at certain times, or are you having organized practices throughout the week? That's one of the big questions to ask. I think what we try to do is we try to give them some freedom because everybody's different, right? Some people like to play more, some people like to practice more. And so what we do 2 days a week where we have organized practices where we have certain skills stations set up, drills, etc. They have time before and after to do whatever they want to work on. Normally play qualify 2 days a week. And then you basically have another 2 days to really work on what you want to work on. If you want some individual time with the coaches, that's great. If you want to be able to FaceTime your coach at home, you have that ability to do that. But I really believe giving those players the freedom to work on the things they need to work on is huge. Always encourage, you've got to have a plan. So the ones who have a plan, we don't worry about. We know they have a plan when they come to practice. The ones who don't have a plan, let us help you make a plan because you need to be very efficient in your time versus just going out there and hitting balls, talking to your friends, looking at your phone, and you're really not accomplishing anything, even though you think you're out there practicing. So I think that's the big piece that we try to do is try to help them plan as well as have some organized practices as well. And then we think, the strength part of it, the physical part of it is such a big tool not only to get bigger and stronger and faster, right? Because you need to hit it further. Everything's hit it closer to the green, your score is going to be lower, right? But what it does for you mentally. So you know how it is. You work out, you feel good about yourself, just improving the mental side of things. I remember a freshman 2 years ago that came in, and the first month of school, it just killed him. He was very uncoordinated in the weight room. We kept telling him, hey, you need to get in the gym. You need to get in the gym. He wasn't doing it. And then watching that guy now, after he's been in the system 2 years, and you can just see it. Not only, his self-confidence is up. He feels good about the way he looks. A little bit of the baby fat's gone. He feels like he's cut up a little more. And it's just interesting to watch that development.
Mhm.
So I think, and I heard Dr. Greg Rose talk about this at a coaches convention, start early, like, 14, 15, really come up with a very regimented workout program because it really can help you a lot. And I think y'all seen it, right? On the professional game.
Yeah.
It used to be they used to talk about these guys will go to the bar back in the days and after the round, and you watch these guys with their physio and part of their team and the masseuses and everything else they have, and just to see where the fitness level has gone just blows your mind. I mean, you think about it, Ryan, and all the guys we see that aren't very big that are absolutely pounding the golf ball. It's
Yeah.
amazing what speed has done. And I'll say this just for the women's side, that's the biggest piece that I see is lacking on the women's side is there's not enough emphasis on gaining more speed at an earlier age. And because to me, that's the biggest separator now
Yep.
is the ones that hit it a long ways. Either tour has a huge advantage
Yep.
over the ones that don't hit it as far. Because just like they said in the strokes gained book, more greens you hit, lower your score.
Yeah.
Coach, I want to take our viewers and listeners inside your office a little bit. And I was just actually reading a podcast from a couple weeks ago, some of the comments, and it was, we have sent emails to all the coaches that we would like to play at, that we think are, in this case, it was their son. They believe that they are not shooting for the stars, that they have found coaches, schools that they think should be in the exact spot. and they've not heard from anyone. So my first question, not to put you on the spot, but how overwhelmed are you Division I coaches with emails? And is that really still the best way to get your attention?
It is, without question. Number one, to answer the first part, very overwhelmed. And it's kind of interesting. We try to get back in touch with everybody. It's tough because, like I said earlier, you have a little category list of here's our wish list. These are the 10 or 15 people that we have, you know, checked off that we're going to really watch and follow. And then you're getting all these emails, right? And the biggest thing I would say is don't get discouraged, even though it's easy to, is just circle back every now and then and put it out in front of that coach. It doesn't have to be the worst ones are the ones that send it to you every week, right? And you're getting that, that same email. But it's nice to circle back to those schools and give them a chance. Maybe it was a busy time of the year. I can go ahead and tell you if you're sending it during the season, it's really tough for coaches on either side to kind of catch up with the emails they're getting. I mean, like this morning I woke up, I don't know, I had 10 emails today already.
From juniors.
From junior golfers, yeah. I just looked at emails a little while ago, and I've received 4 more today. I mean, so you're getting a lot, right? I think the big thing is just stay in touch with those schools. Try not to do it where you're wearing them out, but at the same time, just keep putting yourself in front of them. I think that's the big thing, and let them know. I mean, sometimes it's better if you just say, "Hey, coach, just want to let you know this past month I played in 2 tournaments. This is what I did. Hope your season's going well. Good luck to you in the conference tournament." Boom. I remember getting that email from one of the players that, and I liked it, right? He kind of, you know, changed my focus, right? Got my focus back, my attention back, so to speak, on him. And so I'm like, oh, talking to my assistant about him and say, hey, look, this kid just played pretty good. You know, we need to make sure we get out this summer and see him play, right? And so then you try to, you know, get in touch with him as much as possible. I'm really big on, if we know we're not interested, to make sure I get in touch and say, hey, look, we're going in a different direction. Thank you so much. But I mean, I don't think that's happening a lot, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of coaches out there. I was real surprised. My good buddy's the track coach here. He said he never responds to an email from a recruit. And that really surprised me. So I got a feeling, because he's a very conscientious guy, I got a feeling there's a lot of that out there. And that's why a lot of these juniors and their parents are getting pretty frustrated. The other thing I'd say, Ryan, is this. It has to come from the junior. Dad doesn't need to send us an email. Mom doesn't need to send us an email. It needs to come from the junior, because that's who we're dealing with. And especially on the men's side, we really want them to come in, and the maturity level is a big thing. I mean, somebody asked me, what's the biggest difference between coaching women's golf and men's golf? I said, it's 4 years. And they said, what do you mean? I said, when a freshman comes in on the women's side, she is 4 years older maturity-wise than a guy at the same age.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's a huge difference with that. And that's the piece that, just make sure the junior is the one corresponding with us.
Well, Ryan, boy, did we just not hear that again? Once again, we hear that, right? So, yeah, very interesting, Coach. That is something that Ryan and I deal with quite often at tournaments. You know, parents going, "Oh, I want to help out and I want to help," but they don't realize how that impression, as much as you want to help, it really still needs to be driven by the athlete. You know, that athlete needs to show that they have some independence from there. And I think that is a struggle, which I also think that what we've heard a lot is why coaches like international students a lot of times, because the parents are not as close. A little less communication there. But with that being said, Coach, one of the things that we try to get an understanding on as well is kind of from a ranking standpoint, you know, tournament play. Are there certain tournaments or that you look at, calendars or schedules that you look at that say, you know, if they're playing in whatever events, you know, local NC, you know, North Carolina PGA events to NB3 regional events to a Hurricane to AJGA, are you just looking at a collective schedule and a broad schedule? Or are you looking at them, I'm not going to recruit them unless they play in, these top tier invitationals?
No, I think for us, like let's talk North Carolina. So the Carolinas Golf Association, they have the Tar Heel Youth Golf Association, which has basically North Carolina events. Then they obviously have the ones like the Carolinas Junior Boys, which is for North and South Carolina. The state of Connecticut, the Connecticut Junior, New Jersey Junior, all of those events I think are really big. The Hurricane Tour, the AJGA, other tours. Then it becomes, I got to pull the results up because I want to see who was in the field. Did they win at 218 and the next player was 229? You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
again, it goes back to, like Ryan was asking about how do you predict? We have something to compare it against, right? So when you're playing these tournaments, people ask us all the time, do you go to the high school tournaments? I said, well, it depends on who's in the field, right? If there's 30 of the top 50 juniors in North Carolina are playing in the class of 4A, then yes, we'll go there. But if there's like 4, generally speaking, you're not really going to go there unless that person's at the top of your list. So we try to make sure that, the state juniors, those golf associations throughout the U.S., their events are huge, I think. Like, winning your state championship is a massive thing, whether it's in high school or during the summertime. But all the tours, I mean, Hurricane, AJG, I mean, obviously very proven and very successful. The Southeastern Junior Tour is very successful. But again, as coaches, we're going to try to compare who was in the field when you shot those results. Like say you talked about Nick Dunlop. If Nick's in the field and he shot 210 and the guy that sent you an email shot 212, that's going to get your attention, right? And so I think, being able to compare it is a big piece of what we're trying to do.
Awesome, Coach. Well, you've been an absolute wealth of knowledge. Really appreciate catching up with you. Certainly, thank you for all the kind words about PDI as this becomes, we believe, a real game changer as far as predictability. But we want to wish you the best of luck and certainly keep on doing a great job at ECU.
Well, appreciate you having me on today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
All right.
Well, there were some fireworks there, Roger.
Absolutely.
Figuratively. And the coach, once again, some new things there for sure. I was real curious about that email question because, fortunately or unfortunately, I have been dealing with messages on some of our podcasts and people that are sending things to the NB3 information page. That is, my son, daughter shot 65. No one's responding. No one's even looking at them. They're so much better than X, Y, and Z who have already been given the offer. I mean, they've got all the answers, right?
Yeah.
And listen, you're a parent. I'm a parent. You want the best for your kid. You have to be careful as a parent, but we all understand at the end of the day, they do just want what's best for the kid. There's a right way and a wrong way. But I think Coach brought up maybe the best point of all that I think is the most difficult thing for parents to understand. And that is, to play college golf now, you are playing against the world. The world. You're playing against kids from China, Japan, Korea, Russia, Australia, and the other 49 states in the United States, in Canada and Mexico.
Right.
And, as big as football is in America, football players don't have to deal with that. Many rosters have 80 players on them in football. You're actually far more able to play Division I football as a football player or Division I baseball as a baseball player than golf.
Mm-hmm.
In golf, a lot of schools have 8 spots. how many of those spots are taken by the other 3 years of a 4-year college, a sophomore, junior, and a senior, which means that school may have one spot for an incoming freshman. So now you're going against the entire world, Roger, for one spot. And you're wondering why it's being difficult that school's not getting back to you. They may already likely have their person, and it's not an indictment on your son or daughter. It is a reality that it's just tough doing business because you're going against so many other phenomenal players. I think it's the toughest part for junior golf parents to deal with because they're sure that their son or daughter should be going to Stanford and are shocked when not only aren't they going to Stanford, but there's a good chance they're not going to East Carolina either just because the competition is too severe.
Ryan, I mean, that's a mouthful, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we hear this all the time. I literally was on a call 20 minutes ago. Well, actually, 30 minutes ago.
You've been on with me for 30 minutes.
Okay, all right, an hour ago. So an hour ago with a parent talking about this, right? And it's like it's the body of work in which you have put in front of these coaches that's going to matter, not just a score, not just because you want to go to that school. To your point, it is the world that wants to go to that school. It's the world that wants to play on one of those coveted 8 spots. Not, just because I want to, I can. And I think that's been the American way, unfortunately. And it's just not that way any longer. And I think that, as we've tried to address this with trying to change how rankings are, how the landscape looks like, and what's being done there, is to give more kids potential exposure by playing no matter where they are, right, and creating that body of work, which I think is going to be difficult just because it is just the way it is right now. So it's an interesting time, and you're seeing it more and more. You're seeing more PGA Tour exemptions going in for these junior athletes. Golfers, playing the PGA Tour, playing the LPGA Tour, playing Korn Ferry events. We're going to see it get younger and younger.
It is amazing. No doubt about it. Another great testament and feather in our cap. It's great that it's not coming from you or me. You're hearing about PDI now weekly from coaches. If you're not a believer yet, if you haven't gone to juniorgolfhub.com yet and started your PDI assessment, here's another coach saying, man, if he had this data, and you can get it, you can work on it. And by the time your player is ready to be recruited, to be able to send a coach your PDI score, it's going to matter. It's going to separate you from the other kid that's shooting 69 because there are so many kids shooting 69. So once again, we thank him for that testimonial, but certainly encourage you all to go to juniorgolfhub.com, begin your PDI assessment, go to juniorgolfhub.com, check out your new hub ranking. The hub ranking system certainly transcendent in the game of junior golf, as it just uses more information than previous systems. Ultimately, it will be the system that is used by every college coach, and eventually, we hope certainly to have PDI a part of that. So another great show, Roger. I'll tell you what, it's so much fun. It's so educational. I just love doing these because I love to hear the excitement in college coaches' voices as they talk about the recruiting process. We don't want you at home to get discouraged. There is a place for everyone. Go to juniorgolfhub.com. Look at all the different colleges that play college golf. There is a spot for everyone. Just know what's appropriate and use the juniorgolfhub.com as your roadmap to find the perfect college for your son or daughter. Roger, another great show. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks so much.
You got it. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. We'll see you right back here next week with another great coach. Until then, so long, everybody.